Trauma Therapist Podcast, episode 534.5. All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise the awareness of trauma and to support and inspire new trauma therapists just starting out on the trauma-informed journey. I do that with my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0, my online courses and workshops, and the Trauma Therapist newsletter. If you're a therapist of any kind and you work with individuals who've been impacted by trauma, I invite you to head on over to my website at thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. All right, let's get started. All right, Jeanna, you ready to do this?
I think so.
Okay.
I think I'm ready to do it.
All right, here we go.
Can you hear me okay? Is my volume all right?
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Okay, cool.
All right, Jeanna, here we go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I am very excited to have as my guest today, Jeanna Gomez. Jeanna, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
All right. So here we go. So Jeanna is a trauma and relational therapist who offers private counseling to individuals, couples, families, and groups. She utilizes the PIT model, which is Pia Mellody's model, to heal childhood developmental trauma, relational trauma, codependence, anxiety disorders, and addictions. Jeanna is a lead assistant and a new faculty track candidate with Somatic Experiencing International. And that's what we're going to kind of be focusing on today. She's also been trained in EMDR, Somatic Experiencing, Brainspotting, Bodywork, and Somatic Education, otherwise known as BASE. I'd never heard of that. We'll talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Integral Somatic Psychology. She also uses these models with her clients to heal shock trauma, including developmental trauma. So you are one busy lady. Welcome. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, when I hear that, I always think, wow, yeah, that's a lot. I think about it.
So before we get going here, share with the listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
Okay, yeah, I'm from Texas. I was born and raised in Austin, but I live in Houston.
Okay.
And I kind of go back and forth between the two cities because
Okay.
Austin's always my home. So,
all right,
yeah.
Awesome. So before we kind of dive in here, as I was saying before, we started recording here, I had never heard of Pia Mellody. Can you just give us kind of a nutshell of what the PIT model is?
Yeah, certainly. It's a developmental model. It's a trauma model, and really, Pia Mellody is the one of the founders or senior fellows over at the Meadows in Wickenburg, Arizona. It's a trauma treatment and addiction facility.
Okay.
Very well known, and including Peter Levine. He's also one of the senior fellows there. Several of trauma, theorists are part of that. So she developed that model, and that's the model that they utilize there in a lot of the treatment that they use with clients. And it's about codependency. It's a relational trauma model. And so I have been trained in it and retrained in it, because we get to go back and review, and we get to practice, and we get to really steepen ourselves into that model.
Okay. Awesome.
So it is about working through the developmental trauma and utilizing that. And there's 5 areas of that program that really 5 areas of a person that they deal with that this trauma model probably brings out. And that has to do with self-esteem, their boundary issues, their reality issues, meeting their own needs, and also doing things in moderation. And so it helps people to really go into those core areas and really start to work through them. At the same time, purging a lot of shame, negative introjects that the person has experienced because of abuse or dysfunctional family systems, developmental trauma.
Right.
And it's really about, part of it is about relating with the self, coming back to relation with the self, relation to those wounded pieces of us from younger times, and bringing them forward with them, not leaving them behind.
Awesome. I'll make sure to have that linked up here at the show notes page. So let's start out here, Jeanna. Okay. How the heck did you get into this field and into trauma? Go tell us, share with us.
I always go back to where I first started, which is corrections. I worked in corrections.
Okay.
I worked with female offender populations in a prison system, male populations in a prison system, in jail systems. That's kind of my first career, moving in.
What if I may, what drew you to that?
It was, I don't really know. It was one of those things, like when I was growing up, I would see a lot of crime movies. I would see a lot of, detective movies and things like that. And I always kind of wanted to be more like a detective cop kind of person. But then I also enjoy, speaking to people and getting to know people. And not that field doesn't do that, but I felt like, okay, where can I maybe bring those two together? And probation and probation officer, correctional kind of places, prisons, jails, kind of seemed to be the area that I was kind of drawn to. Okay. So kind of having that piece from the background. And then, so my first job was as a probation officer in Houston. And in that field, I did specialized programs. I worked with a lot of people who had, addictions and had some mental health issues. So these were specialized programs that as a probation officer, I was involved in. And so that's kind of where I started kind of really delving into that. That's my first job out of college as a sociology major,
pardon me. So obviously there's a lot of trauma. I mean,
yes,
it's probably all trauma, but is that something as a probation officer, as a correction officer, that you bring with you to the work? That are you cognizant of that?
Not those pieces. I'm cognizant of the trauma being present with many people. So that's what working in corrections really taught me. So I was the program manager. I was the mental health director for the women's facilities, one in New Mexico. I lived in New Mexico for 10 years. And I was the mental health director for that particular facility, and then became the mental health director for the men's federal facility. And so in that work, recognizing the extent of trauma that was present with offender populations. And then realizing the extent of trauma that we as employees in an institutional field that we have as well, coming in, and how they perpetuate, that particular trauma could be perpetuated in that kind of environment. And so my work with the women and my work with the men, specifically in mental health, is what really broadened my awareness about trauma and the extent and the levels of the trauma. I saw so many things. In fact, if I can say that was the best, that would have been the best area to get as much experience about various levels of different types of trauma and also mental health disorders. Okay. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So unfortunately as well.
I want to hold that here. So, and come back to that. How did you become a therapist from there?
Yeah. So in there, there was a time where I was finishing up my master's degree at the same time I was working in that field. Okay. And what I asked the facility, people, is I really want to do therapy. I know I'm the director, but I want to have a caseload too, because I want to work with these women. I want to work with these men. I want to get my experience. And I was already doing that, like as a mental health director, but not as directly. So
you wanted to get in there more.
Yeah, I wanted to get in there more, move more of the clinical work versus the administrative type of work. And even though I kind of knew some of that, I wasn't really in it. Right. So they were like, yeah, that's what you want to do. Go ahead. So I was able to get that load. And from there, it just steepened in my passion for working with trauma and working and really understanding it. And I kind of think sometimes it's like, maybe part of it was like my little detective work too, right? Kind of coming in, like I really enjoyed getting in there and finding out the the small areas that
Mhm.
people were
I'm
dealing
very
with
much
and
like that
bringing those out.
too. Yeah.
And bringing those out and really helping them to see how even what we would consider a small piece is such a big piece for them and how it impacted the rest of their life.
Well, let me ask you something. Along with that, I mean, look, trauma in and of itself, you talked about the variety of traumas, the continuum of trauma. It's no matter how you slice it, it's heavy. It's
It is
intense.
heavy. It's a heavy.
How did you manage that going in, starting out? And there must have been something about you that thought, you know what, I can do this.
Mm-hmm. I felt that I drew my energy from the women, especially the women, the female offender population. Just seeing them really taking in the information, wanting to apply it, wanting to do better, even in the institution, in the area, because that was their home, right? They wanted to do different, and I really got a lot of my, I guess, energy from them, just to see them taking that information and applying it and doing something different with their life, even in the institution. And then to be able to see them later when they would get released, some of them would, call, or they'd send a card, or they'd send something as to what we were doing for them and how we were working with them really impacted their lives. And one of the things that I would do is bring in some of these bottom-up type of models, such as EMDR. Not so much somatic work at that time, because that was still something that was not necessarily in my radar at the time, but certainly developmental trauma, and then EMDR and other, and even bodywork sometimes, and movement work with them. And so that's where it really kind of came. It's like that energy of doing that work with them and seeing that. And so it really kind of fulfilled, I guess it fulfilled me. It kind of made me feel like, wow, there's something to this work. And sometimes at that time, sometimes I didn't even understand how the EMDR pieces worked, or certain things would work, but yet they would, because I was learning too, and yet they would. And so that in of itself was intriguing to me. It's like, I want to know more. I want to know, how is it that these models work, and what do they start to do internally to our nervous system and to our brain and our neuroplasticity and all the changes. So that was intriguing to me. Again, kind of that detective work, right? Like, what's that about? What's that about?
You've done,
so it's really exciting.
Yeah, I can see that. It seems like it was obviously very rewarding for you too. I mean, you've done so much, as we shared in your bio. What led you to Somatic Experiencing to become a lead assistant and on the faculty track?
Yeah, so I started my private practice in New Mexico. I live near Albuquerque and Grants, and that's where a lot of the facilities were at. And I started my practice there. And so I was doing both things.
Oh,
and
wow.
then in 2006, I moved back to Houston, I moved back to Texas. And I had started the practice there, was growing, I was doing a lot of things there, but I also knew that Texas was home. So I was in one of those moments of impasse. It's like, I either stay and I keep growing, or I start to transition back home, because I definitely want to come back to Texas. And so I did. I transitioned for a little while. I had two practices, one in New Mexico, and then also the growing in Houston, and bringing that back up around. But because I had a lot of connections in Houston, it made it a little bit easier, as Houston is where I started my corrections career, and then went to New Mexico to continue it. So I moved back to Houston and continued to start to build the practice here. And that is where I got hooked in with the Meadows. And the Meadows used to have, and now they still have it, but at that time they had it in the Houston area, the Meadows, Texas. And the Meadows, Texas was a facility they had out in the New Caney area, out in that Conroe area, really far out. But I had already learned about Pia Mellody's work. And I wanted to get more information about that. And so I asked about being a contract person for them, contract clinician for them. And they said, yeah, sure. And so in that process of doing that, and this is where I think things came together as far as divine intervention. I'm going to just say divine intervention came in together because I was able to get trained in this model, the Pia Mellody model, the PIT model, post-induction treatment model. I was able to get trained. They sent me to Wickenburg, Arizona. I met Pia Mellody, met a lot of the staff members there, got trained in that model, and then retrained in that model. It's a very powerful model, but it requires a lot of intense continuation of learning it. And then would, periodically, hear from the Meadows, Texas, yeah, we have a client for you, come on out, that kind of thing. And at the same time, I was building up my private practice as well. And I swear, Guy, every time I would go out there, they would say, oh, that client has left. That client has left, is discharged. And I think I never saw a client because every time I would go, they would be discharged or something would happen. And then eventually the program closed. So what I made out of that was that was where I was supposed to be at that time in my life, to learn that model and to get connected. And out of that is where I learned about Peter Levine. Out of the Meadows is where I learned who he was. And he did a seminar in, I think it was in Austin at that time. He did a seminar in Austin as part of the Meadows, maybe involved in that. And that's where I learned, like, wow, this is something I got to pursue. And so I think that me being in the right place at the right time, and again, it was just, for me, I feel that it was where I was meant to be at the time. Even if I never got to see some of those clients at the Meadows, Texas, and all that, I got the training, and it was just amazing to get the training and to meet all these people. So that's when I started my training.
Okay. So what about somatic experiencing drew you to it? And I ask you that for our listeners who are like, people have probably heard about it. But what about it drew you?
So with all of the other trainings that I have ever had,
right,
it was learning about it and applying it, and kind of like with EMDR, kind of having an understanding about it, just the process of it and so on. And being able to do it and knowing what to do and knowing how to do it. And with SE, what it brought was, now I know the whys, that there is actually some neurobiology here going on. And there's some things I can put my finger on and realize and explain and be able to share with my clients. This is what's happening with your autonomic nervous system when this occurs. This is what happens when you walk into a room and you feel like, oh, I need to get out of here. And you're trying to tell yourself, no, stay. Let me use all of my tools to stay. And your body and everything else is telling you, leave, get out here. And you leave and you go. And then you feel really upset and bothered by the fact that you didn't do that, didn't stay in that room, didn't stay in that store, didn't stay in wherever it is that you were going. Even though you've had tons of work and maybe you've had tons of therapy. And so it gave me a different framework and being able to, one, explain and to understand me to understand. Mm-hmm. And then it helped me to understand my own trauma, my own history and my own trauma, and feel it from a different internal level. And so that to me, like, was mind-boggling to me. It was like, wow, here is this information that I'm getting, and it's showing me how the nervous system is really responding to the trauma and our instinctual mechanism to be able to heal.
That's interesting. So in a way, and that all those other modalities hadn't done that.
They really they hadn't done it to that level.
Right.
For me to be able to really see that instinctually we have the ability to repair instinctually if we just have a little bit of guidance and help to do that. And that guidance and help was that the SE and learning how to do that with clients and guiding them through something that they have been stuck in for most of their lives, and to help move it through in a different way so that they can feel empowered in their own instinctual brainstem body awareness that something has shifted, not just their thoughts, not just their emotions, but at a whole nother intuitive and whole other brainstem level. I'm
going to put you on the spot here.
So
if I can. Can you share can you share with us maybe one of those moments, experiences you had with a client where you saw this for the first time or second time or whatever, where this oh wow, this is how this works?
Yeah. Gosh, there's many of them. But I would say there was a client that I had that had military trauma in their background. It's a military trauma, and then of course developmental trauma at the same time. And what they were experiencing returning back to the United States from their Iraq time, was that when they would be driving, that they would pick up on let's say a rag on the road or something on the road, on the side of the road, a chair or something, and they would immediately respond to it as if it was debris or a possibility of a bomb or something from their military. And so when we began to work through this experience of coming into recognizing what their body was feeling in the moment, what their emotional state or what their impulses and their emotional state was telling them in the moment, even though they were in my office, but that they were feeling as though they were back over there, and being able to help them expand into where they were present, current time, slowly getting them to see that they were in the office. They were talking about driving, that they were in the office. And somewhere in there, they began to go from back and forth from seeing the debris in Iraq and seeing the debris here in driving along, 59 or some highway, and then recognizing their safety level of being in the office and being present with me and being present in the experience here. And then they could get to, this is what I'm doing now, and yet it's coming from an old time, but they could stay more present with what was going now.
Right.
Still seeing and picking up on this and still feeling it internally, but they were able to stay with what was going on, because the words that I was using was, as you notice what you're, just what are you noticing right now? What's happening now? Right. Where are you at now? And that in of itself kept them from dissociating so much.
Right. I love that. So
when I saw that not dissociating, it was like, wow, they're right in the middle, somewhat in the middle of the trauma, but still here.
Yeah.
And so that was amazing to me to see that happening.
I appreciate you sharing that. And as you're describing that, it sounds simple, but of course you're learning how to navigate both of those states, manage your client at the same time, keep them grounded, hopefully a little bit of activation, and of course, everything that's going on with your own self.
That's right. And trying to be in that field with them be
Right.
in that resonance field that we call it, right? In that field with them, so that I can be as regulated as I can, so as to help them to not feel so dysregulated on their end. Because they're going to pick up on me if I'm dysregulated and they're not, they're dysregulated. We're both just two dysregulated people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I'll tell you, just the excitement that I feel internally, and the gratefulness, really, that I feel when I see that happening,
Mm-hmm.
is enough to keep me in the space with them.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that it's just a blessing. For me, it's a blessing to be in the space with somebody. And I'm emotional now. To be in that space with them and see them progress. I think
See them what? I missed that.
Progress.
Yeah.
To see them progress and to get out of that feeling of stuckness. For me, it's a blessing to be in that space with them.
I mean, obviously, Jeanna, you have a undeniable passion for this work, and you are obviously in the zone when you're doing this. What do you think? What is it? Do you feel that, and I know you shared a little bit about this, but what do you feel allows you or compels you to get in that zone with them, with people who've suffered, who've been traumatized?
Yeah. Part of it, I think, is my faith. Part of it is, I think it's my, again, feeling blessed to be in that space with them, that they're allowing me to be in that space with them. And I feel then almost like I need to be grounded. Mm-hmm. If they're going to give me that much information, they're going to give me that much of their lives, I need to give them that same amount of passion and that same amount of respect and that same amount of presence. And I think that, every day I say my own, prayer, or my own, groundedness. I say my own thank yous for giving me the tools, but also help me to be in the space as best as I can for this particular person, for this day. And I just go with that. And I do that every day. And let me do what is it that I'm needing to do in this moment with this person, or let me do what I'm needing to do with my people today, and help me to be in that space. And I think it just occurs. And it just occurs. And again, I always feel that gratitude and that blessed place of them allowing me to be in the space with them.
Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful. But what I'm hearing is a heightened level of intentionality, right? It's not just happening. I mean, you're being very intentional about what you're bringing to that space.
Yes, I am. I'm being very intentional. My innate intuition is very open, and I'm, again, very intentional, very attentional, attention and intention to this person, and intentional about where am I, what is this person needing, what are they saying to me, what am I reading, what am I noticing in their nervous system, what am I noticing in this person, and what they're needing in this moment.
For those people who are listening, who are maybe who haven't studied somatic experiencing, what would you say to them? How would you advise them? Should they study? How do they get into this? I mean, I don't want to say that it's one model or one modality is for everybody, but what's your take?
I would say that if you're passionate around going into trauma at a deeper level. If you've had the question, you've asked yourself the question, why is it that this person, every time that I give them cognitive models or I give them tools, that they come back, they try, and they still seem to be stuck? And that you want to explore that further. It keeps coming to you to want to explore that further.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just be with just that question. You're really feeling into, why is it that that's happening? And I want to know why. I want to know more. Then that is a cue for you to let you know that there is more. And whether you then say, okay, is somatic work what's happening fully, not just in their thought process, but what's happening in their midbrain with their emotional state, their memory centers of their brain, what's happening with their body. Why is it that their body stops them from moving forward? Then follow that, because that's your intuition. That is your intention. That's your intuition. That's your signals telling you you want more. You want, as a clinician, you're wanting more. And however far you take SC or any other model for that matter, because I have many models that I utilize, but as far as you take it, then your intuition will let you know. But if you're having that feeling and you're aware and you're asking that question a lot of yourself and you feel intrigued, then I would say follow it. Follow that intrigue.
As we kind of wind down here,
yeah.
I know I'm thinking to myself, man, if I was going to take a workshop, I'd want to have you as my assistant, or be seriously, if people are listening and they're like, I want to learn with this, how can they, is that possible for them to jump on a course and I want to get with Jeanna? How would they go about doing that?
Yeah, well, I'm, we started the SC training in Houston in 2017. I'm the lead assistant. I'm there all the time, getting it going. So it's new into Houston since 2017. Austin was the main city in Texas that was doing the SC training. And so now we're on board. And of course, Denton is also on board. But, we have trainings going on, right now we're in the middle of our training. We're in our beginning 3, we're going to be going into that in October. So it's a 2-year cycle. I will be co-training with the current trainer for that in 2023. And eventually, I don't know, but maybe eventually taking over for Houston, but for the trainer. But I'm co-training with him and we'll be doing that. So that will be one. But I also do many of other trainings. I also do intensive workshops, my own intensive workshop. I'm very passionate about working with SC and shame and reduction of shame and understanding what I call the somatic side of shame. And that is a new training that I'm going to be doing come September. And that is looking at how shame produces in the body and what are ways, experiential ways that we can help to reduce that and be able to purge that shame, that negative shame that people experience from childhood, developmental trauma, and or, even adult trauma. And then I have a lot of different other kinds of groups and workshops that I do. So you can go on my website and look at some of those.
Okay.
So,
share with our listeners what that website is and how they basically
it's Gomez Counseling Consulting.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll have that linked up at the show notes page here at the traumatherapistpodcast.com.
Yeah.
Jeanna, wow. Amazing. You seriously, you are so friggin' inspiring. This is why I do this podcast, to talk to people like you, sincerely. How about a go-to book recommendation, whatever related or trauma related or not?
Yeah.
What do you think?
3 books that I often, want myself I have read over and over probably, and also always recommend to clients and people. Peter Levine's Trauma and Memory. Pia Mellody's Facing Codependence.
Okay.
And the other is Peter Levine's Healing Trauma. That one is a little small, thin, brownish cover book. It has a CD in the back, probably now MP3 or download now. And it is a great way to do some very simple exercises to getting to become much more aware of sensations in the body, or not being able to sense sensations in the body, for a person to really practice that and to come to recognizing their, how their body can very much help with boundary repair.
Mm-hmm.
That there's areas of our body, there's levels of our body that are boundaries, and when they're ruptured, they go offline. And so how is it that we can connect back with and repair some of those areas? So the skin boundary, hair boundary, skin boundary, muscle boundary, organ boundary, so on. And so, that's a book that I say to people, just try some of the exercises in there and notice what is it that you're feeling.
Awesome. All right. So again, I'll have those 3 books linked up at the show notes page. Jeanna, I'd love to have you back at some point. I mean, obviously there's so many things that so much you can share with our listeners here. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. You're an inspiration, man.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah,
all right.
I really enjoyed it. And yes, I'll come back.
Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.